The text of the week for this week is Pseudolus by Plautus. This is a play that does not have a particularly good translation currently available, so this slideshow in the introduction is all you have to watch. There is a translation available if you want to read the full thing in its entirety, but this slideshow is going to introduce you to the play in sufficient detail that you can do this week's summary. So I just want to remind you of the generic plot of a Plautus play. Young man falls hopelessly in love with a virtuous but enslaved young woman, a virginal hooker, who's about to be sold to a new owner far away. The young man enlists the aid of a clever servant who must surmount numerous obstacles, including the young man's conservative old father, in order for the union to happen. The father, the blocking figure, is withholding money, or is himself a rival for the young woman, or both. Complications come from pimps, parasites, and from the lack of intelligence on the part of the freeborn. And all ends happily, often by coincidence instead of by planning. So let's think about how it applies to this play. In this play, the hero is named Calidorus, hot-blooded one, who laments to his slave, who's called Pseudolus, means false one, that his love, Phoenicium, exotic one, girl from Phoenicia, has just been sold to a Macedonian general by her pimp, whose name is BALLIO. Great name. It doesn't actually mean what it sounds like it means in current English, but it's still a great name. At this point in the action, a final payment of 500 drachmae out of a total price of 200 drachmae is arriving for this day to pay off the girl, and then she'll be sent off to the Macedonian general. So the play starts out with this little bit of background information, which Pseudolus immediately stops, turns to us and says, this is the most hackneyed plot in drama. Who wrote this junk anyway? Says, he promises to solve the problem. So here we have, in production that I directed earlier in my career, Calidorus with his slave Pseudolus. The most interesting thing about this play to me, and the most problematic thing about the translations, is that it has a meta-theatricality which is often edited back out by current translators. That is, Pseudolus openly takes us, the audience, into his confidence and tells us that he's not only a character, but that he's going to take over as playwright. He's going to write the play as he goes along because he thinks the script he's been given is so terrible. Throughout the course of the play, he constantly worries, but not the thing that slaves usually worry about, that the circumstances will be too difficult. In Pseudolus's case, he worries that they'll be too easy and that the play is not sufficiently complicated to be interesting as theater. He worries that it's a bad play and he has to make it more complicated than it really is. He tells us that it's all going to come out okay because he's smarter than everybody else, but the plot is so thin that he's got to, just to give it some life, make it more difficult. We move then into the main action. Pseudolus and Calidorus meet up with BALLIO, and Pseudolus acts so suspiciously that BALLIO is immediately apprehensive. But the play is almost over before it starts because BALLIO says he's just decided not to sell the girl at all. He's not going to send her to the Macedonian general, so it won't be difficult for the boy to have an affair with her. As it turns out, however, that's just a joke, and he just says it to put Pseudolus off balance. But it's the first case in a long series of cases where some secondary or supporting character says something that almost stops the play before it even starts, that is just completely stupid as far as theatrical plotting goes. Really then, just to make the plot more complicated and stretch things out a little bit, Pseudolus tells Calidorus that he needs to bring in a loyal friend who can help with the plan. Pseudolus then runs into the father figure, called a senex, father, whose name is Simo, means ape-like one, and his friend. Simo has heard that his son is trying to raise money to buy the prostitute. It's not, once again, he almost stops the play too early because he says he already knows about it. Correctly realizing that his son is not a genius, however, he takes Pseudolus's bet for 2,000 drachmae, the cost of the young girl, totally, that the son won't succeed. Here in my production again, the pimp BALLIO in modern clothes with his henchmen. And at that point, we get the arrival of the Miles Gloriosus, or at least his stand-in. BALLIO is engaged in preparing a birthday party for himself, and he neglects to notice the arrival of HARPAX, a name that means literally the grappling hook, the thing that soldiers would throw to another ship to try to capture a foreign ship. HARPAX is a Miles Gloriosus figure, a soldier, but kind of cowardly or stupid soldier, in service of a general, who is sent to deliver the final payment and collect the girl. Pseudolus, in his quick-thinking way, pretends to be BALLIO's slave and says, why don't you hand over the money? And again, nearly ending the whole play prematurely, HARPAX is really ready to do that. He turns over to Pseudolus the letter entitling the bearer to collect the girl. But he will only deliver the money to BALLIO himself, even after Pseudolus is almost handed the money. Pseudolus has to, in his playwright role, invent this complication that the money will go to BALLIO to keep the play from ending too soon again. This is my HARPAX, a wonderful actor who I loved for his big, goofy-looking ears, and he actually had a speech impediment. He arrived in our production on a little motorcycle. Here he is meeting Pseudolus after he has just driven up onto the stage on his scooter. Calidorus shows back up with his friend, Carinus, a name that means charitable one, who agrees to help, and he loans Pseudolus the 500 drachmae that he needs for the plot, again, almost too easily. And Pseudolus comments that he's really surprised that this was solved so easily because Calidorus is so stupid that he generally can't figure stuff out. But Calidorus, in his own meta-theatrical comment, retorts that he's supposed to act stupid. He says, I'm playing the young lover. As an afterthought almost, Carinus comments that, in contrast to our hero, there is an incredibly bright new foreign slave in town that scarcely anyone has met yet. That is, everybody knows Pseudolus and can figure out what he's up to, but maybe this new slave would be interesting and helpful. This new slave's name is SIMIA, monkey-like it means. Pseudolus finds him and convinces him to impersonate HARPAX and to meet with BALLIO. SIMIA is a clever slave like Pseudolus, and he's sort of his metaphorical evil twin. He's willing to help with the plot, but he's also willing to stretch the plot out by torturing Pseudolus a little bit and get his own fun. There's a longer scene that follows then when the father, Simo, meets with BALLIO, and they discuss the bet and how crushed stupid Calidorus will be by losing his beloved. In this case, the blocking figure, the father, just doesn't want his son to be able to be happy and get the slave girl because he just thinks he's too stupid. So this is the Simia in my production who has on a soldier's uniform. That is, he's imitating HARPAX, but you can tell that this uniform is kind of pieced together. It's not a real soldier's uniform. BALLIO then encounters the real HARPAX, and because he has just been met by the fake HARPAX, who he thought was real, he decides that the real one must be fake. So he's very cruel, keeps poking and slapping and treating HARPAX as a slave. But HARPAX eventually loses his temper and rises to the occasion, at which point BALLIO realizes that he's the real messenger and that he has already been fooled by Pseudolus. It turns out that the soldier has some backbone. After all, they messed with the wrong guy, and he forces them to pay back the entire 2,000 drachmae to the general, which ruins BALLIO. He goes broke. So here we have BALLIO, picture of BALLIO with Simo, the HARPAX figure. You'll notice that my particular production had a theme of wheeled items. Calidorus, the young hero, arrived on a skateboard. Here the father is in a mobile wheelchair, but the pimp BALLIO has taken away HARPAX's helmet and is tossing it back and forth and teasing him, but he's about to get in big trouble for that. Eventually, in the end, Calidorus gets his girl. Pseudolus wins the bet with Simo, and he turns to us and tells us that the real victory is that somehow he's made the play last long enough to keep us interested, which means that there has been victory all around, and that's the end. And there is the curtain call, the entire cast, some of the prostitutes lined up across the back, but you can see Pseudolus center stage there, and next to him the red-haired boy is Calidorus, the hot one, and his girlfriend Phoenicium, the exotic girl, standing next to them.